Welcome, everybody. We may have a few others joined us, but today we're talking about our work towards medical debt relief. Do you all know, have you all read or heard a little bit about that already? You see the work that we've got that going? Excellent. It's been going out in the Money Matters. It's going out in the, we're populating our social media with our effort. Who knows what our goal is? Anne Louise, what is our goal?
The goal is to raise $100,000 so we can pay off $10 million worth of medical debt.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad that's coming across. I'm super excited about that. So how this came about is that one of the first conversations I had when I came to the Illinois conference was, it was so exciting that we were able to pay, as a conference, pay off all of this medical debt. But so many of us weren't here, weren't able to participate. And so I said, well, we can fix that. Let's just have another campaign. And got so busy with other stuff that it got slow in coming about. But at General Synod this year, we heard our group, what do we call, our delegation from the Illinois conference had the opportunity to talk at more length with Tracy Blackman, and she talked about how that campaign has gone and how it's wrapping up at the end of 2021 in terms of national contributing to any dollars that are raised. And the delegation in one of our caucus meetings says, we have got to get moving on this. This is something we need to take on. We're working on all of this financial cleanup, financial crisis in the conference. You know we need to raise money for the conference, but you know what? We need to raise money for our spirits. We need to raise money, and because we care for our neighbors, we need to make a difference in our communities in some way that we do it together. When you have 60,000 members of this conference, we're stronger together. This is demonstrable way that we are stronger together. That the money that we are able to raise, that we're able to collect, will make a difference in our communities, and none of us could do it alone. This is magnified and amplified by our common work. So this week and next week, our all conference chats will be talking about medical debt, about what this program is about how it works, about how to make it work in your local church. We just decided today that the final cutoff for accepting donations will be December 10th. So really the idea is it goes through annual celebration, which is the end of November, right? November 20th. However, we're going to leave that open for a little bit longer in case people are energized at annual celebration about it and want to contribute. So I'll be in touch. Sekinah, you now know that our deadline is December the 10th, and you can share that with Reverend Blackman. And anyway, I'm just really excited about this being a first real, since I've been here, real conference-wide effort to make a difference in our communities, to make a difference with people, to get just the opportunity to give a gift of relief. I've carried medical debt, and it is a burden. It's a mental burden. It's more than a financial burden, just to be carrying that and to make choices about paying your bills and going to collections and feeding your family or paying your mortgage when we have in a position we have to choose, and to relieve that debt, that we just have to do it. So I'm excited about it. Anyway, I could talk all the time, but I need to turn this over to Sekinah. Am I pronouncing your name right? I think we've met. Have we met through Jack Sullivan?
Yes.
Maybe that's
he is my spouse.
I thought that was
though he lives in Ohio.
That's okay. I lived in different state from my spouse for a good long while too. So really glad that you're here with us and to talk with us about medical debt and about this campaign that the UCC has been in, and inspire us in all ways to make the most of this opportunity together. So I'll just turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for the invitation and for your commitment to individuals and families. There are always human beings connected to anything. And as you are seeing them for the wonderful creation that they are, we all know that they don't need to be straddled with debt burdens of any kind, quite honestly. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I just want to bring you greetings from Reverend Tracy Blackman and Reverend Dorhauer, and all at the national setting. I am fairly new to the staff. I'm the Minister for Economic Justice. I have been with the United Church of Christ for about 1.5 years. I actually started literally a couple of months before the lockdown. So that was very interesting. So, and I am deployed. I live in Greensboro, North Carolina. Some of you may know that name for probably good things and bad things, depending on where you were brought up in terms of the Greensboro massacre that happened in terms of the KKK, as well as, and when they came and literally massacred people that were a part of the labor movement, as well as the start of the sit-in movement at Woolworths with the students from North Carolina A&T State University, HBCU, that actually had planned it with students from my alma mater, Bennett College, which is a historically Black college for women, as well as what used to be the Women's College here in Greensboro, that for predominantly white college, now UNCG. So at any rate, thank you so much. I do have a slide presentation for you, but if we can we just have a word of prayer to open up? Great. God of mercy, God of love, we say thank you for this day. We say thank you for this opportunity to learn more about your love, as well as how we can be actively engaged in showing it, to relieve the burdens of individuals and families that are suffering with medical debt, that are being ostracized even within our society. Thank you, God, for the Illinois Conference, for this 10 million in 10 weeks, for their prophetic call to do something about a broken system. Be with us now as we discuss. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. All right. All right, do you all see the first slide and not anything else right now? I can't see you.
Yes, we see the first slide and nothing else. USA Doctor.
Great. Wonderful, thank you so much. All right, okay. I like this representation because it's truly, really what it is. You know, the doctor bill, stethoscope bill for $98,000. I wish that would not be the case, but the truth of the matter is that this is exactly what some of our siblings are going through. So what I want to do today is to go with this agenda, talk about the United Church of Christ and our commitment as it relates to medical debt abolishment, talk a little bit about how it works, then why it is important. And then we're going to dig a little bit deeper into medical debt, and then talk about how you can help, and then have some questions and answers afterwards, anything that I may not have covered as well. Sounds good? I think, great. All right, so the United Church of Christ, you all know this probably even better than I was an outsider looking in. I was at the Center for Responsible Lending, where we fight predatory lending, as their faith affairs director. And I remember the news story of the medical debt relief in Chicago, in terms of Trinity, in terms of also Reverend Blackman's church in St. Louis. But all of this started in 2019. And this is something that truly does, like that First John text talks about, little children don't just love in word and speech, but in truth and action. And so when I saw the news story in terms of the outside looking in, not a member of the staff or anything, I said to myself, Lord, these folks are serious about the gospel. And that's exactly what it is. Serious about being engaged in a way that truly people are not punished because they are too poor to be well. And that's a quote from Reverend Blackman. So this is something that we are committed to doing. This is actually something that the United Church of Christ continues to be the only denomination to date that works with RIP medical debt. That is our partnership with RIP medical debt, but we are the only denomination to date that works with them. And by that, I mean, they have a lot of churches that actually contribute and partner with them, but they do not have denominations other than ourselves. And some of that actually, those of you that may be coming to the RIP Medical Debt YouTube page or their website fairly frequently, you're gonna see something that comes out probably in the next 4 weeks or so about their church campaign. They're doing a new church and faith campaign, and we're gonna help them kick that off, if you will. But I want to show you a video about how RIP medical debt works. Oh. Sorry. I hate that. Great, here we go. I'm sorry, I just realized that you all did not see what I was showing. Hold on one second. Technology works when it works. Great, here we go.
Million Americans, or 1 in 3, have struggled with the weight of medical debt, causing many to deplete their savings, turn to crowdfunding, declare bankruptcy, or worse, delay the medical care they need to stay alive. More than half of Americans say getting a bill they can't afford is as scary as a serious diagnosis itself. Our debt is killing us. But what if we could make that debt disappear? We're RIP Medical Debt, a nonprofit that has done just that, eliminating billions of dollars in debt for struggling Americans. We are working not only to shift the way we think about medical debt, but change the lives of people living in its shadow. So how do we abolish billions of dollars in debt without billions of dollars? By using the rules of the game, not to win, but to create a world where we take care of those who need it most. When you go to a doctor's office, hospital, or clinic, you might get a separate bill for every step of your care. If these bills aren't paid, they can be sold to a debt buyer for a fraction of what you owe. However, they will still attempt to collect the full amount owed from you. Some will add negative marks to your credit report, affecting your ability to buy a car or home. while others will even take legal action, resulting in wage garnishments and property liens. These actions used to leverage payment threaten the financial health of hardworking Americans who have this debt through no fault of their own. That's where we come in. RIP Medical Debt works with our partners to see through the chaos and find those debts that will be the most impactful when relieved. While we can't search for a particular individual's debt, we can filter them down to make sure we're serving the people who are least able to pay. With our donor support, we're able to buy millions of dollars of debt at drastically reduced pricing, which makes this disappearing act one of monumental proportions. But we don't stop there. We make sure any negative marks on credit scores for the debt we buy are removed. So not only can recipients forget their past, but they can begin to move forward. Our programs put no additional tax burden on the recipients and are compliant with HIPAA and the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And after all the behind-the-scenes work is done, every year we send out thousands of letters to homes all across the country, letting people know their past is in the past. Their health is not a burden, and their life is worth more than a bill. And together, we'll cure medical debt.
Okay. So moving forward, why is this important? Why is it important for us to partner with someone who literally buys that on the secondary market so that this can be eliminated? Why is it important? Let's hear from the Word of God. I believe that that's where we should always go. It's important because of Jeremiah 29:11, where God says that the vision that God has for our lives, all of our lives, is to give us a future and a hope. That Proverbs tells us to not to rob the poor just because they are poor, and don't exploit the needy in court. I love that part as well. We know the Luke 4 text that Jesus rolled the scroll of Isaiah and talked about the Spirit of the Lord was upon him, ultimately to let the oppressed go free. It's important because the Word of God does have this sound way of pointing us to the biblical year of Jubilee, a year in which there is release for all those that have been enslaved because of their debts. There's a Sabbath rest for land and people, and a redistribution of lands lost because of that, and a reordering of prices for land and labor based on proximity to the next Jubilee. We use the hashtag Biblical Debt Jubilee because it is all of those things. And ultimately, it is for us then to be repairers of the breach. We have to begin to think about our efforts in mission, in debt abolishment, in terms of not only as it relates to scripture, but the framework, Biblical Debt Jubilee, as well as being repairers of the breach, which is another way of saying reparatory justice. And so those of you that have also kept up with some of the other things that are going on within the United Church of Christ, as well as the United Church of Canada, you also recognize that we are actively engaged in the UN Decade for People of African Descent. We are actively engaged in the global reparatory justice movement. We are actively engaged in the reparatory justice movement in this country, and even our support of HR 40 in the US House. And we are called to be just that, repairers of the breach. And that is why it is important. But the other thing is that there is a such thing as a ripple effect. One small change can make a great impact. That impact can be positive, or that impact can be negative. And for right now, for a lot of individuals and families, they are strapped. They're climbing this massive hill, trying to to actually reach for that future and a hope promised in Jeremiah 29. And they're strapped with medical debt, shameless plug here, and they're also strapped with student loan debt. And this is something that is making it virtually impossible for some to buy a vehicle, which means no transportation. Some of you may live in some of the cities there in Illinois where there's a great transportation system, or you could be like me, that you may live in a medium-sized city that has a kind of type transportation system, or those that may be in rural places. And for those of us that are in medium or rural places, if you don't have a vehicle, often you are not able to get to work. People are delaying starting families. They're delaying home ownership, all because of the debt that they have. There are also those that are strapped with so much debt or strapped with these various experiences, this one little drop even where a refrigerator blows out. And so then you have to make a decision between food or medicine or paying a medical debt. And sometimes people even go to payday lenders, which are those that are small dollar lenders that always, or ultimately, I should say, ultimately charge these grand rates. Now, I do know that in the last year and a half, the good folks of Illinois, your General Assembly, did the wonderful thing. And I know some of us that are in this advocacy space didn't even see it coming, but you all actually capped your small dollar loans, and that's great. But all of those states that are around you, you see that they continue to have Missouri, 527% APR, Indiana, 382, Wisconsin, 516, Iowa, 336. And that makes for a cocktail that is not good, if you will, because there always is a way in which those that are on the borders, much like we see in North Carolina, can still be lured, if you will, by predatory payday lenders and think that they are paying one bill, but actually they're making so many more. Let's dig a little bit deeper into medical debt. Medical debt are those unexpected medical bills. You see that people are very worried about those unexpected medical bills. Health insurance deductibles, meeting those, making sure that they can pay off prescription costs. This continues to be something that plagues individuals and families. 1 in 3 insured adults 18 to 64 say their family had an unexpected medical bill. Now keep in mind, that's 1 in 3 insured adults. 1 in 6 had a surprise medical bill. And if you, like me, you very well may see some of those stories on your local news about the person that gets that large bill and how, you know, the news anchor that's beloved by the community will go and help that person figure it out and get relief for that person. But that's that person. We still have a system that disproportionately affects those that do not have, or even just have a little in oppressive ways. More than 4 in 10,000 insured adults ages 18-64 could not afford a $500 unexpected medical bill. 7 in 10 lower income adults cannot afford a $500 unexpected bill. And you see how it's broken up in terms of household income. And this is data that was gathered by the Kaiser Family Foundation. Ultimately, if we dig even deeper into the medical debt, or even debt in general, and you heard RIP Medical Debt talk about it even on their promo video, for us that not only have a way in which we want to tackle the wealth gap in general, or the gender wealth gap in general, we also see that the racial wealth gap continues to widen in this country. And ultimately, the wealth gap has to do with just that, debt of all kinds, be it medical debt, student loan debt, all types of debt, and ways in which, unfortunately, the system that we have now does what Proverbs 22 tells it not to do. And that is the system currently preys upon those that are poor and needy. Digging deeper, you see that I love that image there. How do Americans sometimes try to pay off their medical debt, increase their credit card debt, some cut spending on food, clothing, household items, take another job for more hours, borrow money, and some do use up most or all of their savings. Medical debt is the top reason for contact with debt collectors. Medical debt provides blemishes on folks' credit reports. And you also remember that RIP, and this is why we have this partnership as well. Part of what they also do is that back-end work in terms of notifying people that their debt has been forgiven, but also making sure that that debt is off of their credit record. Because credit score, in my opinion, is another hand of the enemy, as we call it, or the devil. Medical debt can cut patients off from healthcare services they need, and also make people fearful about actually going in for problems that they're having, and delaying surgeries as well as needed medical care. We could talk more, I'm looking at the time, we could talk more about the composition of collections, but as I already stated in the previous slide, medical debt has the highest, if you will, rate of actually having debt collectors come after people about that. And that becomes important because a year ago, this is the summer of 2020, we were involved in a push with the CFPB, which stands for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to really raise our voices and tell them in a debt rule that they were putting together, if you will, that debt rule should not go after individuals and families on social media. People should not be connected for for zombie debt, in terms of debt that was really supposed to already have gone away, but somebody buys it and tries to resurrect it and tries to shame you into paying a debt that you really don't owe. We were one of those that submitted comments during their comment period to really raise our voice that this is not of God. And we also joined with some other faith traditions in doing so as well. But it's important that we also submitted our own letter so that people were clear about how that connects to our understanding of a just world for all. So how can you help? You can give to the UCC Medical Debt, obviously, Abolishment Initiative. You can advocate for more comprehensive financial assistance policies to cover all hospitals, not just nonprofit. You could be active in state and federal government policies to help ensure that there are stronger consumer protection rules for medical debt collection. It is a good thing that a day ago, the new director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was sworn in, so that now that organization, which is supposed to protect consumers, will be able to certainly do its job, and we can be active in that. You can also be a part of the comprehensive medical debt abolishment for unpaid and unpayable medical debt. And unpayable meaning that when we look at mortgages, if you will, there is a such thing as the ability to repay. And quite honestly, the CFPB under Richard Cordray, which is with the Obama administration, had even the ability to repay standard in a payday rule that they put out, but that was reversed by the Trump administration and leaders of the CFPB at that time. But this whole notion of having the ability to repay is a common sense way of understanding things within our society. And so unpaid and unpayable, meaning that people will never earn enough, truthfully, to pay off some of the debt that they have been strapped with. And ultimately, you can help by continuing to lift up the need for universal health care for all. So to tell you a little bit more, and then I'll open it up to questions, we could get into some of the mechanics of how this all works. I just received some new information from our contact at RIP Medical Debt, Reverend Blackman and Connie Larkman and myself, and that is that they're going to have no less than two buys in December. And ultimately what happens is when there is a purchase, if you will, when we have to wait for them to go and buy the debt, and then usually 4 to 6 weeks later is when we're able to have that great celebration and press conference, if you will, because that's the time that people, excuse me, will get the letter stating that your debt has been abolished. And we want to make sure that the press conference is in line with those letters, because we don't want people to get letters and think that it's a scam. There are lots of scams going on right now during these COVID times, as well as before, but I think it has actually increased right now, in which consumers are being scammed, and we want people to know that this is not one of them. The other thing that I would lift up and just put a bug in your ear, because this is more to come on this. We were in a meeting with the White House National Economic Council. And one of the things, as before I even started talking about our advocacy in terms of medical debt abolishment and things like that, they came out, I was so impressed with part of the administration's priorities is to tackle this notion of medical debt. So I was very, very pleased with that. And we're still trying to discern ways in which we can work together to make sure that that happens. So I'll just open it up to questions or anyone who has any discussion that you would want us to engage in.
So the floor is open. What questions do you have?
I have a question. The literature that I've read about this says that the payoff is the debts are matched to the area where the contributions were made. How does that work, and how do you know how close to your home people are being helped?
So first off, we try to buy the debt in the area that you're in. RIP used to work with zip codes, if you will. Now they buy debt in regions. So we say, like for instance, Missouri Mid-South has a debt buy that's coming up. There was not any debt in Missouri, and so they are buying the debt in Tennessee and Arkansas. So it depends on the debt that's available in the market at the time of the buy. Now that can change. You know, it could be just a small amount one part of the month, and then a large amount the next part. For the Southern New England Conference, they actually ended up during COVID times, there was not a lot of debt in their area. And so they bought up all the debt that was there, but because they raised so much money, praise the Lord, they also contributed to the RIP Medical Debt Heroes Fund. And so by that, that meant that they bought the medical debt of frontline workers, not doctors, but there were different other classifications of people. So, but yeah, so it works like us telling RIP, we want you to check on the medical debt in this area, and then they get back with us. Yes, it's available. No, it's not. There have been some areas of the country where the debt has not been readily available. In other areas, it has been the exact opposite. So some of our conferences and churches have held their money until, trying to wait and see if there will be more debt available in their areas. And others have said, okay, let's just do what Southern New England did. Let's buy some debt somewhere else. Does that answer your question, Lori? Great. Hold on, there was a question, okay. Dan, okay, so you all gave me some new information, and I have some information as well that I did not, Sarah, talk to you about, because honestly, charge it to my head and not my heart, let me say that. And that is that there is the agreement that we have with RIP Medical Debt is that there's a 80-20 split, if you will, like the amount that we raise. And so keep in mind, the national setting actually donates to all of the medical debt abolishment campaigns. And so that very well could be covered, if you will. And so that means then that we, in our partnership, we have also committed to partnering with them so that they can continue their work and continue their ministry, which is also part of what even the 200K that we're about to give with the church campaign. Does that answer your question, Dan? I can't see, let's see.
You're right, thanks in the chat.
Okay, great, wonderful. Yeah, that's the great thing about having people contribute to everything that you raised.
I have a question. You've worked with other churches and conferences that have been doing these campaigns. Are you aware of any best practices on how to roll this out and to inspire giving in our local churches?
Sure. Some conferences have done the kind of little catchy type ways of fundraising and having like key influencers, if you will, having a contest of who could raise the most money, and whoever loses, they have to do something funny or crazy or things like that. So that's fun. Central Atlantic actually had a campaign in which they did really advocate and linked it all with health access and mental health access. And so they had like book clubs, and they had a particular book that they were lifting up, and had the author go around to various churches and talk about health needs and needs for people to have access to quality health care, which means that they need to be able to pay for it. The Wisconsin First Congregational Appleton, they made sure to incorporate it in sermons. This is one company, so there was a way in which they preached about it. They also made sure that their debt abolishment campaign actually overlapped with Lent. They had Sunday school lessons, if you will. Like I gave a presentation similar to this as a Sunday school lesson. They also had videos that they showed during the worship service, because this is spring of last year, and I'm not sure how many of your churches are still virtual or not, but it's easy to really put a video within a virtual worship experience. So some people have done that as well. And then, Reverend Blackman, when she was pastoring a congregation, and the congregation, a lot of Black churches have the tradition of, giving to the pastor for the pastor's anniversary. And she used that as a way of raising money for debt abolishment. And she had people, instead of giving to her, that they gave to the debt abolishment. So you could do that with a pastor anniversary or even a church anniversary. And then, I'm sorry, last thing, then there's a congregation right now that's in Texas where their youth have gotten like really, really fired up and ready to go about this whole notion of reparatory justice and really making sure that these systems of oppression are eradicated, and they're looking to and have started raising money for debt abolishment. And so, so that's a different type spirit, if you will. And then there's also now Sojourners United Church of Christ in Charlottesville. They're raising money through the Charlottesville Ecumenical and Interfaith Council. And so they're actually not working directly with us, but we're providing them with any information, advocacy-wise or otherwise, that they may need. But they decided, given the coalition that they have put together there, and again, this is one congregation, that they would do it with those that are in their area. And honestly, really the real reason for that is, it's very difficult to tell somebody, just pulling out the air from the Episcopal Church, yes, can you write your check to the United Church of Christ? And then they're going to take the check and they're going to give it to RIP. They could just deal with RIP directly. Yeah.
There are a couple questions. Thank you for that. There are a couple questions in the chat. Dave McCurdy asks, I was confused by the answer to Dan's question. Yes, what percent goes to RIP admin expenses, I think. Does 80-20 split mean that 20% goes to RIP admin? Or is 80-20 the split between national and local conference shares, with national share used to offset admin expenses? Sorry if I'm missing the meaning.
Sure. So 20 does go to RIP admin, and how can I say this? So in the past, with all of the other medical buys, National has contributed. And so in large measure, that contribution has been basically kind of takes up, if you will, that part. And so once you all get to the place in terms of we have the exact amount you raised, for instance, there was a, I can't even remember who, I think there was a congregation that raised 24,000, well, they really had a goal of 30,000. So of course, we made that, rounded that up. The door is open. Maybe I should say it like that. The national setting still has money to contribute. So the door is open. And actually, once I told one of my colleagues about this whole 10 million in 10 weeks, the goal of being able to actually abolish 10 million in debt, then we were trying to calculate things and said, oh my goodness, well, maybe there's a possibility by the end of this, the United Church of Christ could have abolished $100 million worth of medical debt. It's actually a possibility. I say all that to say, don't really get into the weeds about that piece, because you got some folks that are going to help contribute to it as well. If that's helpful, David.
Thank you. And then Catherine asks, I realize there is a built-in time lag on such debt. Do we know if dollars for COVID hospitalizations and or care are on the market yet?
So they're just now coming on the market. It is not, no, the market has not been flooded, if you will, just yet with some of those dollars. And even, unfortunately, with COVID, there have been people who have passed, right? Who have went on to be more fully with the Lord after having contracted COVID. And some of the rescue money, was actually used or could be used for funeral expenses for those that had died of COVID. But there are not a lot of folks that I have found out that even knew that. And so there are a lot of other hidden expenses, if you will, from COVID, from this pandemic, but all of that money is not on the market just yet, but we are starting to see some of it.
And if I could, just to be clear, it's not that I would want to specifically target that per se, but certainly among other things, I know that would be something that would appeal to some of my people when they're thinking about giving. It's just, and I like I said, I know there's a time lag to that no matter what, because some of that debt is very new and would not be on the market probably yet, in my understanding of those things. But if it isn't now, it's going to be shortly, because there's so many people affected. And I think I have some folks that in particular, even if they can't target their region for the debt getting paid or whatever, the fact that it might be going to people who have had COVID issues, and then of course have all those bills involved, it would just appeal to their greater nature. So, but thank you for that.
We also know that comorbidities make a big difference in the experience of COVID, and comorbidities indicate that they've had health issues, which it would indicate they have health costs. So people with medical debt are likely people who have higher risk factors.
Yeah, and therefore already have potentially higher medical bills behind all that, much more to deal with. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
There's also a question here from Tom. Why is the campaign ending in December when there will continue to be such great need?
So Tom, and I saw that question and I just smiled. That is an internal deadline, if you will. It is not etched in stone. In 2019, Reverend Blackman stated, and as you heard even in the report during General Senate, that we would abolish medical debt in every region where the United Church of Christ is. And we've done that. And it was supposed to be basically a Senate to Senate campaign. Now, people are excited about this. And yes, there is still a need. So if the people say we're still excited, we want to do this, we're going to still do it, So yeah, that, we're not going to say no to being about God's work.
And our campaign here in Illinois is just to have a discrete time frame of working on this together. We could have, if this continues with the relationship with RIP, we could choose to have another campaign. Like there were several of our churches that contributed previously. And this is just an opportunity now for all of us to get together and participate. Well, I'm curious from the people that are gathered, what Sekinah shared several interesting ideas of how to promote this in our local churches. Anything really get you fired up, or think that it would be a benefit to the conference-wide effort to implement as an idea to help promote this? Dave.
I am very intrigued by the idea, and I'm reminded that I have had major health issues of stroke, a back surgery, and an upcoming cancer surgery, all very expensive, plus some other things thrown in. And my health coverage has been beyond belief in terms of ability to cover it. And what I have left as the residue of that is not very much. And I'm feeling very grateful. I've committed to our church that I will give the dominant portion of my contribution to that for the month of October. And we have taken advantage of the bulletin inserts that will be in the bulletin during October and in the newsletter, and that our communicator will be making use of the 3 videos that are on the website on our Facebook page. So that will be happening to get this going. The one thing we haven't done is to open it up and let the community know that we're doing this. That's the one other thing through the media, through the local media, the paper and the radio.
Thanks, David. Those are great ideas. Others? Stephanie, I know your church has responded in a different sort of way.
Yeah, we have a donor advised account with the Chicago Community Trust, which is money that legacy gifts given over the years that Chicago Community Trust, which is a major nonprofit philanthropic trust in the Chicago area, invests and manages, and then there's a draw on that available to us as a local church on a quarterly basis, I think. So we are directing some of that giving, and we're using that as a challenge to the church for giving above that. And, you know, we'll see how far we get. But I think if you have some seed money, that can be a strategy, you know, that if you do have operating budget or a draw on some endowed funds or some reserve funds that are missional in nature, you could leverage that and then set a goal above that, whether that's a double or whether it's just an open plate or, you know, whatever the strategy might be.
Would it be helpful? Dave in particular shared that we made some bulletin inserts. We have some videos available. There's a robust and growing amount of material on our website. Would it be helpful to have some written liturgies to include, or slides that you can put in the before the worship slideshow if you're doing electronic slideshows, or you know, do you need me to dress up like a chicken if we make a certain goal, or what would be inspiring or helpful?
I think if we reach our goal, Molly needs to dress up as a chicken now. Is everybody on board with this?
I second that motion.
I'm not sure she was volunteering, but
I'll find a chicken suit if we are able to pay off $10 million in debt.
Yeah. I can say for my congregation, they would probably, they hate liturgies, and because of COVID, we're doing so many liturgies because we're trying to keep, I can assign one person to, to each part, and that's it. So everybody else just kind of, follows along. But slides are certainly would be really helpful. They're really getting educated about paying attention to visuals. That the picture is worth 1,000 words kind of thing. And so, we're keeping our shared droplets and everything down to a dollar roar that way. So that would be helpful. And I think they'd have fun with Molly and the chicken suit too.
But the chicken suit is the reward. There's comment, it would be great as a publicity, but this is the reward. I'm not promising to do it just to help. It's the reward. Anne Louise.
So this is medical debt is an issue that our congregation has talked about previously this year and been really moved by the witness from other parts of the UCC. And my congregation is not one that is a big denominational team player. Let's just say that. So the fact that this is something, work that's happening in the denomination, across the denomination, that landed on their radar screens and really inspired them. When I saw this come from the conference, I may have jumped up and down in front of my computer screen, because I think it's a great way for the passion of our particular congregation to tie into a conference-wide project. Now, I did the math, and if each of the 240 churches of the conference participated, which we know they won't, but if they did, that means each church only has to give $416.67 in order for our conference to pay off $10 million in medical debt for our neighbors. Like, how can we walk away from that? Like $416.67 for each church in the conference? Okay, so, Molly, maybe you need to send me a private, message and tell me what percentage of those churches have broken up with the conference and won't participate. And I'll recalculate the math, but we're talking about it in our church. Do we want, it's also hard because, my church is asking people to give to lots of special projects these days, but, we're thinking about maybe we take a special offering and then we use some of our money in the budget that is there for mission work to match that dollar to dollar for the congregation. My personal household is talking about reaching out to our community of friends, most of whom are unchurched folks, to just say, hey, we invite you to pitch in $10 or $20 because you're $10. How does the math work? If someone gives $10, it pays off $100 of someone's medical debt.
No, 1,000.
1,000, like
$1 equals $100 of medical debt erased.
right. So we're gonna do a little campaign to ask our friends to participate in this, even if they're not part of our church or part of our denomination, because the payback, the loaves and fishes effect is, maybe even a little better than Jesus. So I might even, do some friendly competition in my congregation and say, hey, we've asked our friends to give. Our friends have raised, $200. Come on, surely your friends are better than the pastor's friends. Step up.
I love those ideas. That is fantastic. Maybe there are ways you can challenge your the other congregations in your geographic area or your association to maybe engage. If your church is, then surely these other churches that are more involved would want to do it, whatever it is. Well, I want to honor our time. I want you to, a final invitation is on our Illinois Conference website, ilucc.org. There's a donate now button, and we do have the donate now button updated to include the option of donating directly to medical debt. So if those friends don't have a $10 bill because nobody carries cash anymore, send them to the website and their money will be specific. They can use a credit card, debit card, whatever. It'll specifically go to medical debt relief. So we are actively collecting on that. So I want to thank you all, especially Sekinah, for being here and sharing with us more information. Next week on Wednesday, we're talking more about medical debt, about ideas of how to expand this in our congregation, about some of the realities of medical debt here in Illinois and the impact on family life. And watch Money Matters, watch the e-newsletter, check out the website. We're really trying to be able to provide materials to help our local churches be stronger together. You know, that's what we're all about these days, and really trying to, it really makes a difference that there's 240 churches. That lowers the amount that each person pays. And the more of us that participate, more churches, more individuals that participate, the less of a burden it is on any of us. And wow, what a difference it makes to our neighbors. So really so grateful for all of you. I wish you the best on your Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you next week, if not sooner. Thank you so much, Sekinah.